Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a video that is a progression guide. And what I've done is I've taken inspiration from one of the masters of guide creation, that is Chronic. Unfortunately, Chronic has left the community, but I felt in spirit of things I wanted to continue on something that he's done, and as a progression guide, but put my own kind of like RTM spin on a few things, and also add some additional notes. We really miss you, Chronic, and really want you back as a content creator in the game. Please come back. In this video, we're going to go over my progression guide, which is going to be a case I'll hopefully update it once every 6 months of the year, especially with the release of new content and depending on difficulties of stuff, because variants as well as Act 7 has changed the scope of how things are when it comes to more accessibility and more kind of easier grind. But if you want this, also it's available in the link in the description as a Google Drive link. Also, it's going to be available on Discord. Links are in the description. If you don't know my Discord, it has nearly 3,000 members and as well has various rooms for different things. On the left-hand corner, you have different types of things for different types of progressions. And this always evolves and improves and has in the pinned messages, which is just above my head, these kind of like guides and things. Event and quest completion, we've got something in there, we've got something for variants, the list goes on, and we'll have like, you know, guides for early progression players. There's MCOC video guides list, which is here. It has like a whole load of things for different players. So yeah, it's going to be there. And what we'll do is we'll switch between what is in game and as well what's in the spreadsheet, and a kind of you know, switch between there, because we can do this for the fancy methods of pressing buttons with a Stream Deck. So to start off with, it goes from 1 down the way to 50. There's a lot of content to do in game, especially when you're new, but it's all going to be important and it's all going to be relevant to your grind. First of all, it starts off with Act 1. We've got Act 1 here. Act 1 and acts in general have changed a lot, especially from early steps of what you can get from it. And it's usually a step of going like, okay, well, you go and do Act 1, which is very straightforward. You then go and grab yourself some improved masteries. And normally the case of it is that you'll go down the route of the mastery of dexterity and the mastery of parry. Two things that are very, very important, especially we're going parry there. And then you have to unlock limber and then go down to dexterity. Unlocking with just the 1 point will allow you to make that progress and still kind of like understand the basics of swiping, tapping, which will be important to you further on. We're going to get into some more trickier things as we go. The next thing for you will be to join an alliance. And that's important. Joining an alliance is very important. Whether or not you start off in a very small one and understand it, understand not really the pressures, because you wouldn't be under a great amount of pressure, but understand the regularity where you have to kind of go from doing alliance quest maps and also alliance wars and what you can get back from it. Next thing will be all about doing your completion and 100% of Act 2. And that's going to be a crucial thing of your further grind of doing things like Act 3 as well with that one, because it's very early stages and it's very easier content. There's not pressures of various different nodes and tricky natures to this, but it still allows you to learn the fundamentals, which is all about, as we said, the masteries, blocking, parrying, which is clicking down a well-timed block at a really good and opportune time, and using dexterity to swipe away from danger. You'll then need to consider about your monthlies, and that's going to be a thing as well. Doing normal monthly event quest will be part of a new kind of like scheme of things. And my structure is always that I have certain targets. Sometimes that changes. Like I always say, for the first 2 to 3 weeks of the month, I try to do a monthly event quests, and then after that, try and see if I can do some of the permanent content, especially because that fills up my month. And then amongst recording and making content, that's usually how things go down. So trying to do normal, and then when it gets to a later stage, try to do heroic. It's going to be quite important. You won't see quite explosive nodes and trickier nodes, so it's going to be a very much easier grind. It's also a time for you to consider getting more resources, and whether or not you do that via the Glory Store when it comes to Alliance Quest, but then you're going to be moving on to consider things like classics and classics of certain quests, especially from what it gives back. In some cases, some classics give back a greater amount of tier 1 alpha, but still these are very much easygoing quests, and if you're looking to increase your roster at a lower level, which I do recommend, especially as you go down to further variants, it will require you to have a more expansive roster. And also it gets you on that path to getting yourself some max signature crystals, which again are quite important. Now, further progression, again, on this particular subject is you going down the route of unlocking masteries and as well looking to act for completion. When it comes to your masteries on the scope of increasing your amount of time that you do critical hits and as well the amount of critical damage you do, it will be looking towards putting some points into precision and as well into cruelty, two valuable assets there to kind of work on. Down the line, you can work on things that kind of look towards the future and think about willpower and stuff like that. It's going to be very much down to you on certain things of evolving your mastery and investing your units into that. I would say unit investing into masteries is more important than it would be investing into things like crystals, for example. Is at this point you want to be considering about your evolution of your roster and as well pushing that 3-star, 4-star threshold and going into the point of Conqueror. This is a very good time for you because you'll be understanding the game, understanding the in-routes you have to make, and understanding as well node evolution, because nodes are going to get quite complicated to a degree, especially when you've got certain champions getting huge amounts of regeneration and as well ideas of suppression, little scuffy nodes, masochism, as well as just like weird kind of things that you might not really be too accustomed to. So this is a point of kind of like you understanding the complexity of things getting a little bit more complex in node structure, but as well pushing this to things like master mode. A master per month is going to be something as well, as you understand your monthly evolution and grind, that the monthly event needs to be done for you to start stimulating a 5-star roster, even from a small standpoint, but it's allowing you to make inroads to do that, which I think is going to be quite important for you. At this time as well, it may be that you want to try out Realm of Legends. Realm of Legends is a bit of content where you can get some tier 4 basics, and getting tier 4 basics is a little bit more easier than it used to be. But Realm of Legends is a one-shot with various high hit pool champions, and in this particular fight you may want to take either some 4-stars or 5-stars. If you're finding yourself quite fortunate, and I would say with the Summoner Appreciation, greater gifting event, as well as events throughout the year, you will feel that you will be grabbing yourself more opportunity to get 5-stars at a very early level, which is great. There may even be further inroads that you could make with special events that come out and roll out, and things they may give out for free as well. Look out for that Christmas Day gift, which is always quite helpful and will allow you to stimulate and improve your roster a little bit more further. Now, maybe about this time you're thinking to yourself, I need to get myself the Uncollected title. Being Uncollected is really important, especially because the divide and gap between those that are Uncollected and Cavalier is actually pretty close. So you might be more under the impression that you can make further inroads. And I would say that getting that title is going to be important to grab certain things and unlock certain modes, which is going to again allow you to stimulate your 5-star roster a little bit more further and take yourself away from the 4-star element of your grind. So for this, it will be a case of doing 5.2.6. As soon as you've done that, it does mean that you'll be able to get yourself the Uncollected title. And again, this is the point in time of thinking about doing the monthly Uncollected difficulty and revamping the way you think about your movements in game. Intercepting is going to be quite an important thing for you to consider. The idea that when a champion is rushing towards you, you're rushing just before, you're kind of intercepting their movement, and then you're able to capitalize on damage. This is so that you're not relying too much on your parry, and as well not taking too much damage in the block, but as well you're kind of like keeping the pressure on the enemy, so to speak, which is going to be very important. At this point as well, doing 100% of 5.1 would actually be a good idea. Moving on to doing 5.3 and 5.2 as the last thing. Do bear in mind, Act 5.4, even though it finishes off everything, is actually pretty good to a degree, but you will need a roster that has certain things. Whether or not this is poison and bleed immunity, champions that can interact with evade abilities, so having True Strike, having the slow debuff, having other elements of doing a large amount of damage is going to be very important. The reason that 5.3 is one of the last is because it's incredibly specific. It's all about class related interaction, and it's something that may frustrate a few players to go, right, well I need to take 4 types of skill based champions in one specific node. It can be quite frustrating. But if you've got yourself a lot of different and various class specific champions, you'll probably find the content goes relatively smoothly. Now comes the point where you're entering the big boy territory, and this is the point of feeling like you are slightly in the end game. And feeling slightly in the end game will allow you to think about where you are with your alliance. If you're not pushing map 5 and not pushing map 6 in some sort of way, then you may feel that like, is this really the alliance for me? And you may want to move to one that maybe is a little bit more competitive and allowing yourself to get more glory, to get more resources, to get more champions ranked up over the 5-star and as well 4-star type of line, but mainly pushing towards your 5 stars. More rank 4 5-stars should be something you should be pushing for, and you may have picked up a 565 5-star along the way. It also may be interesting for you to consider Act 6.1 doing a completion and getting a Cavalier title. This is very 5-star specific, and that will be a case of going like, is your 5-star roster ready to do that? And it may be the case that it is, especially the scope and coverage nowadays of some champions. And I would say that dual class crystals are an ideal thing to grab in order to get yourself specific champions. The same thing with the 4-stars and 5-stars respectively. But then it moves on to the more competitive content. If you're not looking towards doing Act 5 100%ing, you may be looking to do, yes, the completion of Act 6.1 or variants. Variants might be quite an interesting thing for you to grind, especially them being a little bit more straightforward than they usually have been. And the Cavalier difficulty, doing a standard completion, if you are finding that difficult, and do bear in mind, I do put out once a month the Cavalier cheat sheet, which helps people with their grind. We give, I think the last time I checked, 10 to 20 different variations of champions to take on respective nodes that Caban put out. But those variants are actually incredibly well rewarded and as well put together that your roster will feel like you can take them on. You can use 4-stars in it, relatively fine, but if you do find yourself like not really packing much of a punch, yes, it will be about doing the 5-stars. Of the different and various variants, I put variant 7 as being the first one to do. Hashtag heroes, let's face it, everyone has a substantial 4-star, 5-star and 6-star roster of hashtag heroes, which will be effective. Variant 4 comes second because you don't need a huge amount of the same type of difficulty, and I would say for myself it's really the first chapter that becomes the frustrating one, and it gets a little bit more fairer and fun from the second chapter and the third chapter, so it's worth checking out them. Variant 3 is a bit of an iffy one because it's text specific, and as well having Magneto, or the Magneto's in, it does mean you might have to build yourself like a non-hashtag metal tech champion, 2 champions, maybe even 3 champions that deal with situations, but it's very much techs are all the way that are pretty good. Blood and Venom and Variant 6, so Variant 5 and Variant 6 respectively, have either you to have a hashtag Spider-Verse, Symbiote, hashtag Symbiote, Mystics. That'll be for Variant 5, that you've got to have a roster that's kind of like breadth that covers that. And hashtag Villain Champions, which again is incredibly specific for Variant 6. All of which have cheat sheets for them, but they are a little bit, not too sure. But for an original, like a knowledgeable completion, it is actually pretty straightforward. It's then when we get into the situations of you trying to 100% Cavalier that make that you will have to really consider what champions you have in your roster and what you can actually do. And I think that's really the challenge of going through this. Now, at the moment, it's a lot better than it was. I'd say the Cavalier Monthly is in a situation where going, if you can complete most, if not all the variants, except for Variant 1, because it's an absolute trash variant, then you should be able to get yourself 100% in Cavalier. And that's really going and saying something. That will be about the time that you should have at least considered having a strong 10 team that is 565 that can take on content. If you're not really there, I'm going to say that you're going to find this a little bit more of a, not a struggle, but it's going to be a case you'll have to intercept all the time, and that's going to be the thing. Your intercept game is going to have to be on point. And this then puts us down to what is next for you. And again, it goes back to variants. Variants have, for a lot of less grind and as well maximum reward, some good stuff that comes from it. The rewards themselves can see you getting new 5-stars, upgrading to 565, ranking up some of the older champions in your roster, getting some 6-stars shards, also having the tier 5 basics, and as well having that tier 5 class catalyst, which is going to be important for you considering those champions to be ranked up further, which is going to be so damn important. And if you were looking to 100% any variant, I would indeed say variant 7 first, then it's a case of doing variant 6. And if you're looking to 100% any variants, I would say in this order would be good. Variant 7 first, then do variant 4, then 100% variant 3, variant 5 and variant 6, adjusting to the interaction with the champion availability and the types of champions. By the way, and as I always say, dual class crystals are the best way to go in order to stimulate more of a roster, especially on the scope or coverage. And I would say it'd be nice if Kabam ever did something where it was like having a hashtag type champion crystal. That would be cool because it allows you to specifically target for variants. So if you Kabam, you're watching, then go for it. There's some iffy ones when it comes to like Road to Labyrinth, and this is again the time of going like, is it worth doing Road to Labyrinth? Yeah, okay, suppose so. But I would say that Labyrinth of Legends is one of the alright pieces of content. It's not making you those inroads and jumps, especially with you might wanting to go do an easy path of Labyrinth of Legends. So maybe do that. Maybe do at least completion of Labyrinth of Legends. It is a particularly alright quest. If you've got Aegon, it makes it easier. 4-star Aegon can work, 5-star Aegon, but most champions can deal with it. I've done so many obscure different types of champions taking on the content. People have used Star-Lord in the past. You can use Longshot. You can use a whole host of champions. It doesn't stop with the types of champions that can take on Labyrinth of Legends. And it's definitely worth at least doing once for the stuff that you get. Especially you may want to kind of go at the same time as variants, do the Labyrinth of Legends. It's just a very timely thing with high hit pools, which can be quite boring. But if you want some easy wins, then definitely go for it. And you may want to 100% it first, especially before moving on to any kind of like scuffy content. This is the point of going like, look, what are you going to do next? Are you going to look to do a full completion of Act 6 or are you going to do Act 7.1 down the line? Now, I think it's going to be a case of going, at least doing a completion of Act 6 is good, big thumbs up, and then doing the completion of Act 7.1. You may even want to 100% Act 7.1 or Act 6.1 first, especially because that content is a case, it's like 6.1 is very straightforward, but it's got some scuffy stuff to it. 7.1 is incredibly fair and good and allows you to make that progression jump to grab some good stuff from it, especially because you honestly do get some good stuff from doing 7.1. 7.1 gives you the very nice 6-star Nexus, but as well allows you to grab a lot of tier 5 class catalysts, so there's definitely some decent stuff on for that one. And then it's a case of doing the stuff that is like not particularly nice. Now, in amongst this time, you can look to do Abyss of Legends. I would say with Abyss of Legends, having 5,000 units is going to be helpful and applicable to doing the content. For me, it was 4,000 units, no stash to do, or I had a very limited stash, but effectively it was just like no to nothing stash, which isn't too bad. I know other people have done it for a lot less, and I know some people have done it for a lot more. Either way, it was what it was, and it is what it is, and it is recommended to go and do it. At the point of recording this video, I've done 2 paths. But I would say that doing anything more than 1 path and at least investing about 6,000 units per path or a substantial revive and health potion stash is going to be quite important to take on the content. Other than that, you may want to consider other options. And I've considered the other options and I decided that I will be doing an Act 6 100%ing first before anything. Act 6 has some incredibly specific stuff, and whether or not you choose to do, and as we all know, 6.1 is the best thing to start off with. After doing the initial completion of 6.2, I did 3 of them 100%, and I'm going back to do the rest as 100%. But found that 6.3, when I had the decent champions to take on the content, I actually found this a little bit more straightforward than I think that a lot of people have tipped. I feel if you understand stuff, and as well you've got the guides out there, which I'm about to do a 100% guide for, it is something that is quite straightforward to a degree, and I use that with if you've got the right champions. And again, this is where dual class crystals come in line and can be incredibly helpful. Do look out for champions being buffed and Kabam creating champion changes. That will indeed help with this interaction. But we must finish off with some of the other scuffy content. Now, at this time, you may want 100% Abyss of Legends, but at the same time as well, you may go, maybe I want 100% and actually do Variant 1. And that's kind of the last thing. I think it's like, let's refer to variant 1 as the victory lap. So as soon as you've 100%ed Abyss of Legends, which again is specific against some kinds of interactions there, you may go to yourself, I want to do variant 1. A little while ago I did 100%, I did a completion of variant 1, and I will, after I've 100%ed Act 6, do 100% clear of Abyss of Legends, over variant 1, especially because I've got some of the champions that are going to make this content a little bit more straightforward and easier, even though the rewards are actually pretty meh, to be honest. The newer rewards are actually a lot better for variants than they used to be. So do take with this a pinch of salt, and do consider the time grind and as well the unfair nature of variant 1 before you even think about like picking it up. That's really what it is. I think players will really use this as a victory lap. But that's really it. As I said, this is more of a homage to Chronic, and as well follows on some notes as well against every piece of content. This has been my progression guide for April 2021. I may adapt this further and come up with some other suggestions to it. Maybe we'll put in another kind of column and say things to then move on to if you don't fancy this, or you were unable to do this, or the roster is lacking, which I have seen elsewhere. But apart from that, this has been the video. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to check out some other content located up there on screen, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye bye.